Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our special live coverage. We're now joined in the studio by Dr. Mustafa Behbehani, a political analyst. Dr. Behbehani, first of all, thank you for coming and sharing with us your time.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with our first question. How would you describe the Gulf's response to the attacks and aggression, militarily and diplomatically?
Well, it was unexpected from a neighbor, and we condemned these attacks.
And do you think that the Gulf has responded, I don't want to say efficiently, but has responded appropriately given the current circumstances?
Yes, they responded collectively and blamed the Iranian official for this attacking the state.
Dr. Behbehani, what about the local and internal response of Kuwait, how it reacted to the crisis? How would you describe that?
Well, all the people of Kuwait were united in, with His Highness the Emir and the government standing shoulder to shoulder and want Kuwait to be in one voice as we did in many crises before.
The largest crisis in our history so far was the brutal Iraqi invasion. Do you think we've taken some lessons from that to apply to this crisis?
Yes. We had a big attack from Iraq, Saddam Hussein, and now we're facing similar, so all are united and are listening to the government in facing this crisis.
And in terms of the government's response and people's reaction, how would you describe both reaction from government and people?
As I said, they are both united in response to the attacks from Iran, and so far all are united even for what is going to happen in the future.
And speaking about the future, what do you expect will happen in the geopolitical arena?
Well, it's very complex now because there are also in it the Israelis with brought the U.S. government, and it's not clear if the regime in Iran will fall or some other radical will come. And now we see Strait of Hormuz also, many ships
have been halted at the Straits of
cannot enter, or they will be attacked. So it's we hope that this war will end soon and not to drag for months.
There are some reports and analysts that are saying that this will become a long-term war of attrition. In your own opinion, what do you think is most likely to come?
Well, as I said, it depends on President of the U.S. and also the new President of Iran, and so how far the U.S. will attack Iran. Also the internal situation in Iran, what is going to happen. Are the people going to support the new government, or they will get rid?
Protest from within.
Yes.
Now, how important is the regional coordination among the GCC countries here in responding to this security challenge?
Well, it is very important that the GCC states unite together and defend the country from any attacks. Now with new weapons, it's easy to attack, as we have seen in Saudi Arabia and Emirates. And
we've seen, especially in the first few days of this crisis, a large wave of attacks and bombardment. Lately, we've noticed that from both sides, the Iranian regime and the U.S. and Israeli occupation's attack, they seem to have reduced the wave of strikes or limited the strikes.
yes, but there is also Israel now, especially Netanyahu is influencing the U.S. to not to stop and attack more, as they're doing also in Lebanon.
Correct. We see a new front almost opening up between the resistance in the south of Lebanon against the Israeli occupation. There's been several land invasions and bombing in southern Lebanon lately.
Right.
What is your opinion on that, opening up a new front to the war?
Well, it's very, really sad, because at the end, people are dying, you know. They don't know where to go, and the killing is really regrettable.
It's indiscriminate fighting almost.
Yes.
Now, Doctor, we've seen a great deal of restraint from the Gulf countries in order not to escalate the crisis. In your view, what would be the appropriate way to move forward? What needs to happen for stability to return?
Well, it is regrettable, as you said, that the Gulf countries are being attacked, and they have to be united, as we have seen, and but not to go into war, because it will be very bad for both sides.
For everyone, yeah.
So they have to be patient and protect, but not to go into a war.
We've seen lately in the last, I want to say this last week, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia opened a more intensified diplomatic communication and channel with the regime in Iran. How would you say the different Gulf states are responding diplomatically to Iran?
Well, Saudi Arabia is the largest country in the Gulf, and also its influence. So it is good that all GCC countries support this effort and try to make a deal with Iran to stop all this, to not to escalate.
So you are of the belief that this can only be solved diplomatically. This will not be solved on the battleground.
At the end has to be because Iran in the same place.
Correct.
And they have seen also many events before that was at the end had a peaceful mean. So this step by the Saudi is very recommendable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, we're seeing from Oman and Egypt offering to assist in supply lines in terms of goods, medicine, and food shipments. Will this create new supply lines that will circumvent the already existing ones, seeing as the Strait of Hormuz has been blocked, seemingly?
Yes, this is a good effort by Oman to have another route to get now supplies, because everything now is inflated with high prices, and you should have a relief. For instance, having even things from the sea, you know, the fish and things that are increasing in price and affecting the people in the Gulf.
Dr. Behbehani, we'll continue with our interview momentarily. I'd just first like to turn to a live stream we have with one of our correspondents out on the field. It's Ms. Sheikh Al-Tamimi. Can you hear me, Ms. Sheikh?
Hello, good evening, Mohammed. Yes, I can hear you.
Ms. Sheikh, can you tell us where you are and what are the current updates taking place around you?
On the 13th day of the Iranian aggression, I am coming to you live here from the Kuwait Fire Force. And today, actually, as we're dealing with the current rainy weather, I'm checking up on the operations center and seeing how things are going on here. And it's going on as smoothly as usual. The civil and military institutions are still working around the clock to keep us safe. To elaborate more on that, I have my guest here with me, Lieutenant Colonel Ali Ghulay, PR Department and Media at the Kuwait Fire Force. Good evening, Lieutenant Colonel. Can you tell us any updates that you have on your part?
Yeah, good evening to you and our dear viewers. I'd like to thank the Ministry of Information for this continuous media coverage. The Kuwait Fire Force, starting from the current event that we are dealing with, we raised the awareness, and as we are speaking right now, the emergency code has been activated, and we are working throughout the clock to ensure the safety of the people. Looking at the past 24 hours, the Central Operation Room have dealt with around 34 general incidents. Speaking of these incidents, as we are speaking right now, we have unstable weather conditions and saturated rain throughout the state of Kuwait. So we advise our citizens and residents to be cautious, especially there are slippery roads, and to adhere all of the advices and messages that we are sending to ensure their safety. Again, there are certain safety precautions, especially when people hear the emergency sirens. It's going off and on throughout the day, especially at night. As citizens and residents, you need to make sure during that time, once you hear the sirens, stay away from the windows, go to the lower ground floors. Try to assign one room that has all of the necessities. And again, if you have elderly people and people with special needs and children, it's your job right now as a parent to give them the advice and reassure them that everything is under control. And there are people who are working throughout the clock to ensure the safety of the people.
That is actually a great point, Lieutenant Colonel, as a parent or as a guardian, to ensure that our children and the people that we're taking care of are aware of the fact that we are actually still being kept safe through the valiant acts of our brave men who are keeping us secure with the military shield and intercepting the missiles and drones, as making sure that mental health is stable during these times, especially for children, because they don't understand 100% what's going on. So it's our job as parents and guardians to do that. Can you also tell me about any updates, possible updates about the teams stationed at various vital points all over Kuwait's governorates?
Yeah, part of the contingency plan and the emergency plan, we deputize certain units that will be stationed in vital areas. Their job is to ensure that these areas are working in a systematic way, especially the hospitals. Our prevention team and the firefighter teams are stationed there around the clock to ensure that the systems are working, and in case of any evacuation, they are there to ensure the safety of the workers.
One last thing, Lieutenant Colonel, if you may, I wanted to ask a summary about yesterday's incident. As our dear viewers know, there was a blaze, there was an apartment building that caught a blaze in Al Mangaf area. If you have any possible updates or assurances regarding that.
Yeah, as we mentioned earlier throughout the media, there was an incident that happened in the past 24 hours in the southern part of Kuwait in Mangaf. We deployed our fire station in a speedy recovery way. We have dealt with that incident. We contained it as a precautionary measure. We evacuated all the people inside of that building. In results of that incident, there were 2 people who were injured. We passed them to the EMS people to do the needful. Other than that, the situation is under control, and we reassure the people that there are people who are working throughout the clock, especially the Kuwait Fire Force, to ensure the safety of the people, as we always do.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel, for giving us a moment of your time, as always. And we wish a speedy recovery for those 2 people who were injured last night. We also advise our dear viewers to always take your your news and your information from official sources, and keep safe during these current unstable rainy weather.
Thank you very much. That was Ms. Sheikh Al-Tamimi, our live correspondent out on the field. And now we'll resume our interview with Dr. Behbehani. Sir, we were discussing earlier that Oman and Egypt are offering different trade routes or different routes to move food and medicine. How will this affect future trade? Will the old trade route be, let's say, deprioritized given the current risk now?
Again?
With Oman and Egypt offering different trade routes to bring food and medicine, will this mean that the old trade routes through the Strait of Hormuz, will they be abandoned, will it be deprioritized, and we will stick with these new routes?
Yes, I think that with this crisis, cannot go through the Strait of Hormuz, has to go to different route towards maybe Saudi Arabia to the Red Sea.
Mm-hmm. And what impact do you think that will have in future trade to come?
Well, it's really affected badly, and we don't know how long it will last. Will not be open to ships unless the war will be completely ended.
And Dr. Behbehani, do you see the current situation encouraging stronger cooperation amongst the GCC member states?
Yes, it is important. Now they are united by the law itself, and also, but what is happening to them in the crisis. So it is important that they are united with one voice, with action.
Doctor, what message do these developments send to the international community about the importance of protecting regional stability?
It is very important that all the sides follow the international law and not to go into war, which is killing the people, and as I said, by international law, this war is illegal.
Now, Doctor, we saw that the UN Security Council passed a resolution condemning the Iranian attacks. How important is this resolution to solving the current crisis?
Of course, the Security Council is the one who will be there to protect the laws of the world, and this is the right step to follow the legal international laws.
Now, Doctor, we'll continue our interview momentarily. We'd just like to turn to this other segment we have, considering the events. We spoke to Dr. Noura Shaibi, the Assistant Professor of Political Science at Kuwait University, who's joining us to share her insights on the current regional developments and their political implications, as well as to discuss the broader impact on Gulf security and international relations. Dr. Noura, how did the speech of His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Mishal al-Ahmed al-Jaber al-Sabah, may Allah bless and protect him, frame Kuwait's position on the recent Iranian attacks?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. What was particularly significant about His Highness the Emir Sheikh Mishal al-Ahmed al-Jaber al-Sabah's speech was not simply the condemnation of the attacks, but the strategic framing of Kuwait's position in a rapidly escalating regional conflict. At its core, the speech served three strategic purposes. First, it reaffirmed Kuwait's doctrine of responsible restraint. Kuwait made it clear that it has not allowed its territory to be used for military operations against Iran. This was an important signal both domestically and internationally because it reinforces Kuwait's long-standing foreign policy identity as a state that prioritizes diplomacy, de-escalation, and regional stability, even while it faces direct security threats. Second purpose is that the speech functioned as a message of deterrence without escalation. By stating that Kuwait is a red line, the Emir was making clear that sovereignty is non-negotiable. But at the same time, the tone of the speech avoided any inflammatory tones. This is a good balance. That's a balance that is very important in the Gulf context, because states are trying to defend themselves without triggering a wider regional spiral. Third purpose, that the address was also about institutional confidence. In moments of geopolitical shock, leadership communication is critical for maintaining public trust. By emphasizing preparedness, coordination across state institutions, and national unity, the Emir was essentially reinforcing the idea that Kuwait's resilience lies not only in military readiness, but also in the strength of its institutions and society. There is also a broader regional signal embedded in the speech. The Emir linked Kuwait's security to the security of the wider region. Or the wider Gulf states, right? This reflects a reality of Gulf geopolitics, that any instability, be contained within one state. There's a ripple effect. Instability in one state can impact the instability of another. So energy infrastructure, shipping routes, and economic networks are deeply interconnected. The speech was less about reacting to a single incident and more about positioning Kuwait within the broader strategic landscape of the current conflict. As a state defending its sovereignty, calling for unity at home, and signaling that stability in the Gulf remains a collective responsibility.
And Doctor, from your perspective, what message does Kuwait send to the region through its response to these developments?
So, from a strategic perspective, Kuwait's response sends a message that is carefully balanced between firmness and restraint, which is a hallmark of its diplomatic tradition. And this is what we are used to. So the response signals both sovereignty and resolve. By clearly condemning the attacks and affirming that Kuwait's security is a red line, the leadership is making it clear that the country will not tolerate violations of its territory or threats to its population. This is an important deterrent message, not only to the immediate actors involved in the conflict, but also to the wider region, that Kuwait will defend its sovereignty and critical infrastructure. At the same time, Kuwait's messaging avoids any inflammatory rhetoric or calls for escalation. This reflects Kuwait's long-standing role in the region as a bridge builder and mediator, a country that historically prefers diplomatic engagement and regional dialogue rather than confrontation. In that sense, Kuwait is signaling that even under pressure, it intends to remain committed to regional stability and international law. There is also a collective security message embedded in Kuwait's response. By emphasizing that the security of the GCC is interconnected, Kuwait is reinforcing the idea that instability in one part of the Gulf affects the entire regional system, particularly given how integrated the region is through its energy infrastructure, through maritime trade routes and economic networks. And finally, Kuwait's response highlights the importance of institutional resilience. The focus on preparedness, protection of critical infrastructure, and national unity demonstrates that the state's strategy is not only about reacting to external threats, but also about strengthening internal stability during periods of regional uncertainty. So the message Kuwait is sending to the region is essentially that sovereignty will be protected. Escalation will be avoided where possible, and stability in the Gulf remains a shared responsibility among its states.
Now, Dr. Noura, as an educator yourself at Kuwait University, how can academic institutions help students understand the seriousness of the regional security challenges?
That's actually a great question. Because from an educational perspective, and as an educator myself, moments like this highlight why universities play an essential role in helping students interpret regional crises with analytical clarity rather than emotional reaction. Academic institutions contribute in many ways, and most importantly, the universities help students understand the structural context behind conflicts. Regional security challenges are rarely isolated events. They are shaped by geopolitical competition, by energy markets, maritime trade routes, and international alliances. So it is a complex relationship at play here. Through courses in political science, international relations, security studies, students learn to analyze these dynamics critically and understand how regional events connect to the wider international system. Also, universities cultivate critical thinking and responsible information consumption. During periods of crisis, misinformation and speculation can spread quickly through social media. Academic training, it encourages students to rely on credible sources, to rely on evidence-based analysis and disciplined research methods rather than just reacting to unverified narratives and unverified information. This intellectual discipline is particularly important for maintaining social stability during times of tension. So the universities have a lot to do and a huge role to play during periods of crises in educating and enlightening their students. At the university, we also help develop future policy thinkers and responsible citizens, of course, in our students. By encouraging dialogue, research, and informed debate, academic institutions prepare students to engage constructively with complex regional challenges. Whether they later work in government, work with the private sector, or civil society, they will be responsible and ready to take on that role. In this sense, the role of the university is not only to educate students academically, but also to help them develop the intellectual tools to understand security challenges calmly, responsibly, and within their broader geopolitical context. So ultimately, an informed and analytically trained generation is one of the most important pillars of national resilience during periods of regional uncertainty.
And Doctor, what role does Gulf unity play today in confronting the threats to the security of the GCC states?
Well, Gulf unity plays a critical role because the security challenges facing the region today are inherently transnational, so they do not stop at specific or particular borders. They go beyond that. Whether we are talking about missile threats or maritime disruptions, cyber risks, or economic shocks, these issues affect the entire Gulf security architecture simultaneously. So what Gulf unity provides, first and foremost, is strategic depth. Individually, each state has its own defensive capabilities and resources, but collectively, the GCC forms a much stronger security and economic bloc. Coordination in areas such as air defense, intelligence sharing, and maritime monitoring allows states to respond more effectively to emerging threats. In practical terms, security in the Gulf today is increasingly networked rather than purely national. Another point I would like to point out is that Gulf unity is also essential for economic and logistical resilience. The economies of the GCC states are deeply interconnected through energy infrastructure and through the shipping routes and supply chains, as we have been seeing thus far. When tensions affect key corridors, such as the Strait of Hormuz, regional coordination, whether in managing ports or alternative transport routes or strategic reserves, this coordination helps ensure continuity in trade and energy flows. Finally, there is a strong political signaling dimension as well. When GCC states present a unified stance, it sends a clear message that destabilizing actions against one state affect the broader regional system. This collective posture can serve as an important deterrent, reinforcing the principle that Gulf security is indivisible. At the same time, unity is not only about defense. It also creates space for diplomatic engagement and crisis management. This allows Gulf states to coordinate their positions internationally and pursue de-escalation when possible. So what I would like to say is that in strategic terms, Gulf unity acts as both a security multiplier and a stability mechanism. This strengthens the collective's resilience while helping manage the complex geopolitical pressures facing our region today.
And finally, Doctor, do you believe diplomacy can still reduce tensions between Iran and the Gulf states in the coming period?
That's a very important question, actually. Diplomacy is certainly more difficult today than it was even a few months ago, but it has not disappeared as an option. And in fact, conflicts of this scale often return to diplomacy once the immediate military phase stabilizes. What we are seeing right now is a period of high intensity signaling and coercion. Iran has launched waves of missile and drone attacks across the region, including against the Gulf states, while the other side continues strikes on Iranian military infrastructure. So at the same time, the conflict has put enormous pressure on global trade routes and energy flows, specifically around the Strait of Hormuz, which, as we mentioned earlier, it carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply, right? And more than that, with, affecting food prices with fertilizer and what have you. But historically, when conflicts begin to threaten global economic stability, international pressure for diplomatic engagement grows even more. So major powers that rely on Gulf energy, like China, Europe, and large parts of Asia, they have strong incentives to prevent a prolonged disruption of the region's shipping lanes and energy exports. So that economic reality often pushes the parties back toward negotiations and towards the table to actually have peace talks. There are also regional channels that still exist. So countries historically such as Oman, Qatar, and at times Saudi Arabia have traditionally played roles as intermediaries between Iran and its neighbors. So even during periods of heightened confrontation, back-channel communication often continues quietly behind the scenes. From a strategic perspective, the key point is that diplomacy rarely begins when tensions are at their lowest. It usually begins when the cost of continued escalation becomes too high for all sides. So while the current environment is extremely tense, diplomacy remains a viable path forward. The challenge in the coming months will be whether regional actors can move from the current phase of military pressure toward a framework for de-escalation that addresses security concerns on both sides of the Gulf. So in that sense, diplomacy is not only possible, but it is ultimately necessary, because the alternative would mean prolonged instability in one of the world's most strategically important regions.
Well, thank you very much. That was Dr. Noura Shaibi, Assistant Professor of Political Science from Kuwait University. Now we'll continue our interview with Dr. Mustafa Behbehani. Doctor, how should governments in the region balance security measures while maintaining public reassurance during this time?
Well, I want to say first, my specialty is GCC. I did my doctoral degree, the formation of the GCC. So we see that now the GCC important in the crisis to be united, and stability is very important. I hope this crisis will end sooner than later, and we trust our leaders to be united and go through this difficult time and protect our citizens and people later.
Now, Doctor, how significant is international support to the Gulf right now during this crisis?
Of course, it's very important because we have good relations internationally, peaceful countries, and most of the international states, as we say, so in the UN will step and protect the countries if something crisis happen to them.
Now, Doctor, we've seen a tremendous effort and a rapid response to this crisis. What lessons can the Gulf states take from this current situation in terms of crisis management?
Well, from their experience, they have to know how to solve the crisis and be united, as I said, and follow the international law, which is the one internationally is the one who the law of the as I said the UN.
The UN Charter and international humanitarian law.
Yes.
Doctor, on a purely military front, how do you see this war playing out right now and moving on into the future?
Well, it's unfortunate that this attack by Israel, especially, is against the international law, and it is an aggression and had affected all the countries in the region. So I was saying it's important the UN play a big part, because the majority of the UN now, almost 90%, are against this war.
Correct.
So hopefully that the international law will be the one which rules the world and keep the peace.
Well, unfortunately, Dr. Behbehani, that's all the time we have right now for this segment. I'd just like to thank you again for your time and your expertise during this difficult situation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Doctor. We'll be back after this short break.